Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for taking some time out to view this recorded webinar. My name is Phil DeCorpo. I'm on the product management team here at Tigera. I think Tigera is best known for being the inventors and maintainers of Project Calico. And the purpose of this webinar is really to walk through one of our latest releases, Calico 3.30, and some of the exciting new capabilities that we have in this release. I'm joined by the wonderful Jen Luther Thomas. Jen, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jen. I'm a technical marketing engineer at Tigera, so you may have seen me before on any of the Calico webinars or workshops if you've attended any of those.
Cool. All right. Just in terms of the agenda, we're going to first level set and talk about some of the key challenges that we've heard from users over the years, and some of the feedback that we've gotten from the community that's really helped inform a lot of the new features and new capabilities within Calico 3.30. And so we'll introduce that at sort of a high level and then dive into some of this exciting features. That are included in this release, and Jen's going to help out with some demos of those features, just so you get a sense of how those work and get a little bit more of a deeper understanding of um, some of the exciting things you can do with these capabilities. And then we'll wrap up and just remind everyone some of the ways in which you can participate in the Calico community, get your feedback. It's an exciting time to participate in the community. I think 3.30 is a huge release for us, but there's a lot more that we want to do, and we'd love to hear from you. And we'll talk a little bit about that toward the end. Okay, so as I mentioned, one of the things that we try to do is really engage with our users and our community. We also have a commercial product, and so we've worked with a lot of our commercial customers over years, and there's really a common set of challenges that we feel face anyone who's responsible for operating Kubernetes clusters, whether you're DevOps, platform engineering, cloud architect. Um, the first thing is really rooted in the fact that Kubernetes is awesome for being this multi-tenant environment. You can deploy, any number of disparate applications. A lot of times those applications are developed by different teams. And as a platform operator, you need to understand how those things work, right? You may not have the detailed knowledge that application developers have. So as these new workloads get deployed in Kubernetes, understanding, well, what are the network connectivity requirements? What are some of the upstream and downstream dependencies? And when network issues come up, um, in sort of communication between these workloads are having, issues, you need to be able to effectively troubleshoot those things. Also, we get a sense that uh, network policy and Calico policy in particular is underutilized in the community. Even though it is a really great way to improve the security posture of your cluster, there's a lot of users out there who maybe have kicked the tires on using Calico policy, but have had challenges because it's very easy, given how powerful these policies are, to break an application or in some extreme cases brick your entire cluster, right? And so those are things that we want to enable the community to do without avoiding these sort of more dire consequences. And then finally, how can you easily visualize some of this workload communication and really understand, not just one piece of the puzzle, but how all of these different applications are working together. I think it's become increasingly common, for Kubernetes clusters to have different applications that are deployed, but those different applications might need to access shared services like some type of logging infrastructure, or maybe Kafka queue or Redis caches. And so being able to visualize some of that and understand who's talking to who is really, really important.
Yeah, and I think too, as you mentioned, like connecting with our users, every time we do workshops or webinars, I try to sort of start with a poll, just try and get an understanding of what people's challenges are. And I will say that just the time it takes and the complexity of creating those network policies in the beginning is probably what is putting a lot of people off from using network policies, either at all or like fully securing their clusters. And I guess that also ties into the observability piece. You can't really secure and write these policies if you can't really see exactly what you're securing. So that's definitely the recurring theme with our users.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also been, a challenge for some of the commercial customers that we worked with as well. It's just you need to have those are very symbiotic things, right? Having observability enables security, and that's just seems to be a core tenet of not just deploying applications in Kubernetes, but pretty much anything. So this has really helped drive and inform, the definition of the feature set that we've included in 3.30. So, over the last 9 years or so, we've seen our community in Calico grow considerably. It's, one of the most widely adopted Kubernetes networking tools. It powers probably well over 8 million nodes across 166 countries. I was just looking at some of the usage data for Calico, and you can see just the global footprint. We have users in India and Hong Kong and the Netherlands and here in the US. And it's really exciting to see some some of that adoption. But we've also heard some of the challenges that Jen just mentioned, and just the scale and complexity of Kubernetes deployments have increased. And we've learned a lot, from our community, from our commercial customers, and we're excited to bring some of those learnings into new features and capabilities that are going to enable you to do some of the things that you need to be doing to understand, uh, what is actually being deployed within your Kubernetes cluster, how it's communicating, and then giving you the tools to help improve the security posture of everything there. It's almost just as important as vulnerability scanning for your container images. That is, I think, something nearly everyone's doing to improve their security posture. I think Calico policy and network security is almost equally as important. So this is really a landmark release. It's taking some of our, battle-hardened commercial network security and observability features in the hands of our community. And we'll kind of go into a little bit more detail in terms of what these features look like. And then also, it I'm very excited to launch a free tier of Calico Cloud. And so Calico Open Source now includes all the bits and bytes you need to connect your cluster to this new free service. And we'll kind of go into a little bit more detail um, in terms of what that looks like. But that really extends some of the features and capabilities of open source Calico, and provides a UI for doing a lot of what you might be doing just via the command line in Kubernetes. We've also delivered a new implementation of the Kubernetes Gateway API. So if you're listening to this recording and you're not familiar with the Gateway API, it's a pretty big deal. This was really one of the hottest topics, I think, at the last KubeCon. The Gateway API is the successor to the Ingress API in Kubernetes, and it solves and addresses a lot of the kind of the issues or gaps that existed in Ingress, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit more detail. And there's a ton of other new exciting additions that we'll mention toward the end of this presentation. Okay, so some of the key observability features. The first one is around network flow logs and metrics. This is something we've had on the commercial side for some time, and they've evolved just in terms of their format, all of the Kubernetes metadata that's included, how policies are being evaluated and some of the metrics associated with that. That's really served up by a new API that we call Goldmane. One of the ways in which you can get immediate value from this new API for flow logs and metrics is a new UI that we've included in the open source project called Whisker. So it's served by a little web server container, and it's web based, and it allows you to visualize all of the flow logs that are being generated within your cluster as they happen. And so Jen's going to be giving a demo of what that looks like in a little bit. We also introduced new policy resources and APIs within the open source project. Again, this comes from our commercial solution and has been proven to be a really valuable way to get started with testing and authoring policies before you actually enforce those policies and start to take action on packets. And then finally, all of the bits and bytes, as I mentioned earlier, that are required to connect to Calico Cloud are included in open source. And so you can use this free service indefinitely as sort of a companion to your open source deployment of Calico. So I think one of the sort of marquee features of this release is this new UI. It's fully open source. As I mentioned, it's included in the open source project. And so when you upgrade to 3.30, in most cases, this is deployed by default. And so it is a web-based UI that allows you to view flow logs as they're being generated within your cluster. Those flow logs contain quite a bit of metadata that helps you understand who's communicating with what, and how policies are being evaluated. Also includes some powerful filtering capabilities so that if you need to zero in on specific namespace, a particular workload, or you want to understand how a particular policy is being evaluated, you can easily do that. And then you can also, stream these flows, but also pause and sort of analyze and restart those flows. So that's really helpful in the context of troubleshooting, where you might want to just freeze things and analyze the data without having it being updated automatically as Whisker communicates with the backend, which is the Goldmane API that I mentioned earlier. So Jen, I think it would be awesome if you could just show us what this looks like. And I'll stop sharing and let you share.
Yeah, so this is an interactive version of Whisker that I've sort of captured just to kind of go through the key features in Whisker, and you can kind of see that view immediately on here. So Whisker is always pulling through all of the sort of flows that are happening inside your cluster, and I believe it sort of refreshes every 5 seconds. So you always get sort of an up-to-date view of what's going on inside your cluster. And then with each of these flow logs as well, you can expand them all to get more information. So from the beginning and just kind of this view, you can see where traffic is going from. You've got the source namespace, the source name, where it's going to, so destination namespace and name, over what ports, protocols, what time this flow happened, and whether Calico is allowing or denying this traffic as well. As you can see, all of these flows here are being allowed, but if they were being denied by Calico, you would see this sort of go red. It would be a red blob and it would say deny. And then if you expand each of these rows in the table, you can see more information here. So as we talked about with network policies, that can be complex. It can take a lot of time to create. Being able to go in Whisker and have a look at the flow logs, you can see what the source and destination labels are. So when you're building your policy, you can tie it to the labels to kind of match different identities inside your cluster. And then as things scale up and scale down, they change. As long as they have those labels, it will keep everything secure. And you can also see what policies are being applied to those flows too. So you get a whole list in here. You can see the source destination, so you know exactly what is going on inside your cluster, either just for monitoring and kind of keeping an eye on it, or using it as valuable information to help build and sort of test and monitor your network policies as well. And then if I go back, I can show you the filtering as well. So for example, every policy that's been applied inside your cluster, if it's impacting the flows that you can see on the screen here, will get added to these drop downs. So you can filter flows, say specifically for a fax policy that I have, you can minimize that, and then it will show you all of these flows are being sort of evaluated by that fax policy. And then again, you could go in and have a look in here and just verify that, yeah, I can see that that policy gets listed in the flow log. And again, you can filter by source namespace, and then that will filter all the flows that originated from that namespace, destination, etc. So this will automatically update with whatever's running inside your cluster. So these will be sort of valid destinations that are currently running and that there are flow logs associated with them. So, and this can be also a good way, not just for helping with your network policies as well, but like Phil was talking about the ingress, the Gateway API and the Calico Ingress Gateway. As you're sort of building that, if you're using it for traffic management, like load balancing, you can also verify in Calico Whisker that the flows are going to the right backend endpoints and how that traffic is being distributed as well.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, this is an exciting new feature of the open source project. It's exciting to see just the level of adoption. I think we're only a couple months away from the release, and we've really been seeing a lot of the usage for Whisker increase at exponential rate. And I think it's definitely a valuable tool that can really help turn the lights on in terms of like what's going on in your Kubernetes cluster. I think just what you just showed, the rich metadata that you provide just for a single flow log entry, all the details of policy evaluation, it's hugely, hugely helpful. Whisker is powered by a new API endpoint that we've delivered. We've nicknamed this API Goldmane, which I think is a pretty cool name. It's something that is leveraged by Whisker to provide that constant stream of flow logs and metrics, and enables some of that visibility and observability. All of the filtering options that are included in the API are server-side, so it performs and scales very well. It's something that we were very conscious of. I mean, network flow logs, it's potentially a huge amount of data. We've seen some very large clusters, both within the open source community and on the commercial side. And so we really wanted to make sure that everything that we delivered here performed and scaled well. But Goldmane also provides a building block for you to start doing whatever you want with these API endpoints. And we've already seen some pretty cool things in the wild. There's really, we're going through a pretty interesting time right now with IDEs, things like Cursor and Copilot, and leveraging AI to really boost productivity. And I think some proof of concept integrations with some of those IDEs to connect Goldmane with like Copilot. So like as you're viewing the manifest for a new policy, you can also then have the flow logs from Goldmane piped into your IDE and get feedback on things you could do to improve the policy, maybe address certain issues that you might be getting from denied traffic, things along those lines. So pretty exciting stuff. And I'm excited to see what the community comes up with in terms of building new integrations on top of Goldmane. Another key capability that we've added to 330 is what we call staged policies. And this is a really important feature. Obviously, first and foremost, you need to have observability within your Kubernetes cluster to understand what's going on. What are the behavior of applications? What are their communication requirements? And then, leveraging Calico policy before this release was a bit challenging because you could easily create a policy that might inadvertently start blocking traffic for an application, breaking applications, and in extreme cases, bricking your cluster. Like if you somehow blocked traffic to kubedns, that would be catastrophic. Things would just stop working. So stage policies provide a way for you to get started with that policy authoring and using Calico policy to improve the security posture of your cluster. The APIs for these, so you can see that there's two new custom resources, global stage network policy and stage network policy. Those APIs look almost identical to the APIs you have for Calico network policy and global network policy. The only difference here is that when you define one of these policies, those policies won't take action on packets. It won't actively enforce that policy. It allows you to sort of test and audit the behavior of that policy before you actively enforce it. The other cool thing about this is stage policies appear in flow logs. So that's one of the ways in which you can test and audit these policies. They, appear as metadata, and I think Jen was just showing this earlier, and we'll go into another quick demo of this. But that you can actually see what's happening within these stage policies. Is there traffic being allowed for a specific policy that you created? Is there denied traffic associated with it? And maybe you need to make edits within those stage network policies. But the whole process is allowing you to gain confidence that your policy is doing what you expect it to do. And then you can easily just change the kind and like make it a Calico network policy or a global network policy, and then you can start actively enforcing that. So that's a pretty cool new feature. And I think, Jen, maybe we could just jump into another quick demo of what this looks like in Whisker.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess before I get into Whisker, I normally just show this sort of on the command line if you want to see what stage network policies or stage global network policies you have. You can just run the sort of kubectl get stage network policies. I'm listing all of mine that I've got in this cluster here. Then I guess if you want more information, I'm just doing a describe here for that default vote deny policy that's currently staged. And then sort of once you've had a look at it, it's been applied, you can then go on to Whisker and then sort of have a look, see which policies or see which traffic flows that policy is impacting it. And as well, sort of describing on the command line, you can see what the policy order is, the tier, any roles that are sort of defined in there as well. And then so once you come into Whisker, sort of as I kind of showed before with the Whisker interface, you can see which policies are applied to each flow. You can either filter them using the drop down and find the policy, or you just go into each sort of flow, expand it, and you get the list of all of the policies here. So you can see if I was going to look through, and then I'm not going to be able to find it while I'm trying to do it live, but you'd be able to see we've got the enforced policies here at the top of the list, kind of, and then that will list all of the policies that are actively being enforced on the traffic. And then somewhere, maybe it's off the screen, there'll be the sort of second half of this, it'll show pending. That's where we'll be able to find that sort of default deny policy that was staged, but it gives you a way you can still verify that, okay, on this traffic flow, this policy did match. So I've probably got my label selectors right. I've got my ports right. So I know that if I were to enforce this policy, it's impacting the right traffic. So you'll be able to find all of your staged policies in the pending part of the policies section in the flow log.
Yeah, this is also highlights another change that we've recently made to Calico, which I think has been a long-standing challenge for a lot of customers. And these two fields that you mentioned, like enforced and pending, is meant to address this challenge. So obviously, any stage policy you create is going to appear in the pending field, meaning these are the policies that would apply to this flow if you enforced them. But there can be instances where you have active enforced policies, so Calico network policies or global network policies that might appear in that pending section of the policies within flow logs. And that typically happens when you have long-lived connections. You might create a policy that you want to enforce, but those connections are still persisted. And so the policies that are enforced that appear in the pending field are telling you this policy would apply to this connection once it's reestablished. And that's the point in which Calico policies are enforced, is when a connection is established. And so this provides you better visibility for those policies that you do create and actively enforce. If you have some of those long-lived connections, that field just kind of more accurately tells you, hey, this policy will apply. It's just, not applied yet because this connection was already established before you created the policy. So that's pretty cool. That's there was some major surgery kind of in the internals of Calico to get that working. But I think that's been a source of confusion for both our open source users and some of our commercial customers. Okay, so in addition to some of these new observability capabilities, I think we wanted to even go further. There's a lot of exciting things that you can do now that we have the Goldmane API, and kind of take maybe some of the workflows that are enabled with Whisker and take that even further. Um, and that really led us to introduce a new free service. So this is a cloud hosted service. It's called Calico Cloud. It's free forever. And as I mentioned earlier, all of the bits and bytes like that are required to connect to this service is built into the latest version of Calico Open Source. So you do not need to install any additional components to use this service. Everything is sort of batteries included with the latest version of Calico, and you can easily disconnect. So if you want to try it out, and for whatever reason you feel like it's not something that you want to use, you can disconnect. There's nothing you need to uninstall. But I think that it's pretty useful. In terms of what it includes. So it goes even further with some of the things that you might want to do with observability and policy management. Um, we include something called the policy board. So one of the things that Jen mentioned earlier in her demo was this notion of policy tiers. This is something that is really one of the unique features of Calico. It wasn't included in 3.30. It was included in our prior release, 3.29, and addresses a pretty significant issue for a lot of users, which is Kubernetes network policy. The type of network policy that you have in upstream Kubernetes really doesn't have any deterministic guarantees in which the order of those policies are being evaluated. So tiers solve that problem. You can create as many tiers as you'd like, and the order of those tiers, and then policies within those tiers are evaluated from top to bottom, and tiers then are evaluated from left to right. The cool thing is that tiers also tie into Kubernetes RBAC. So that allows you to have different teams manage policies for different things within Kubernetes. So most typically what we've seen is maybe like you have a security team or like a platform or DevOps team. They're defining policies and tiers that are defining the guardrails for any application in Kubernetes. So like a lot of times that might be egress access control of some kind, in enabling egress access for applications. It could be enabling access to shared services and shared resources, things along those lines. And then lower precedent tiers might be managed by application teams, and you could delegate the authoring of policies to your application teams. And because of tiers, you have guarantees that those policies that the application teams are defining can't really do anything to circumvent policies that are defined in higher precedent tiers like platform and and security tiers. So the policy board is an awesome way, like you can visualize all of that. You see, those tiers, you see all of the policies within those tiers, and then it connects into Goldmane so that you can get real-time metrics as to how those policies are being evaluated, the number of endpoints that they apply to. So there's a lot more useful information in this visualization. You can actually click into a policy and view the details of that policy in kind of a much easier way than just viewing the raw YAML and the manifest. And we also have a really awesome visualization for workload communication. So this goes far beyond what Whisker provides, and it's called Service Graph. And it is more of a graph-based visualization where you have graph nodes and graph edges. In some cases, those graph nodes might be namespaces. It may be things like the public network, private network, and you can drill into each namespace and see the services and deployments that are running. And you can select graph nodes or graph edges to automatically filter the flow logs for that specific selection. So that's really, really powerful. And then finally, we've also allowed you the ability to automatically generate policy recommendations. So this ties a couple of new features together in helping you get started with using network policy as a way to improve the security posture of your cluster. So this connects into Goldmane. It then begins to monitor the flow logs that are being generated for each namespace within your cluster. So we'll automatically discover each namespace and then generate a staged network policy that will isolate that namespace based on the ingress and egress communication that we're observing in the flow logs generated by Goldmane. So that is a very cool feature that's available within this free service. And then once those policies are created, you can download the YAML and just automatically convert those to Calico policies and start to enforce them. So it's a really kind of great way to bootstrap the process of maybe getting started with microsegmentation, namespace isolation, improving the security posture of your cluster. The other thing I just want to point out is this is Calico Cloud. This free service is really read-only access to your cluster. So as part of connecting your cluster, we're not asking for any onerous permissions in terms of RBAC. We really just need to read the Kubernetes API. We need to read data from Goldmane to generate some of the visualizations, the data within policy board. I think the only thing where we ask for read permissions or write permissions is part of that policy recommendation process. And that's something that you actually download YAML, and that gives us permissions to create a special tier where those recommended policies go. So pretty cool. Definitely encourage you if you've upgraded to 3.30 and want to check out this free service. It's a pretty simple process of connecting your cluster. You sign up, it dumps you into Calico Cloud, and then you can download a simple script that will connect your cluster and kind of do the certificate management to provide a secure tunnel from your cluster to this free service, and then you're off and running. So yeah, pretty cool. I think Jen, you were going to maybe show off kind of what this looks like.
Yeah, I can do a quick walkthrough.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'll start on the service graph because I feel like this is something that really helps give context to what's going on inside your cluster. Like the flow logs and Whisker are definitely super valuable. Like it gives you so much information about the flows, but it also helps just to be able to kind of see that visually and how everything is communicating. So like this is the service graph. This is looking at it sort of at a cluster level. You can see here that these are all the namespaces that are inside this cluster. And you can also see the sort of direction of the communication. You can see that all of these lines are green. So Calico isn't blocking any of this traffic at the moment. So if you had put policies in place that were denying traffic, whether intentionally or accidentally, it becomes very easy to sort of spot them and see exactly where that communication breakdown is happening. And then you can click on any of these, you can double click on any of these namespaces. So for example, the pets namespace, and then that will sort of zoom you into that namespace, and then you can actually see how those workloads are communicating within that namespace. So you can see this is just an example of a sort of online storefront. So I've got some virtual pods here generating traffic. I've got different services processing the requests. And you can see again, all of this traffic is being allowed by Calico. And one thing that's pretty cool in Service Graph as well, as you click around, so at the moment, I'm just looking in the pets namespace. If I were to click on any of these flow lines, the flows table at the bottom auto filters. So kind of like in Whisker, where you can manually go to the drop downs, choose if you what source namespace or policy, etc. you want to look at. As you click around inside the service graph, the flows table at the bottom of service graph is automatically sort of filtering, so it makes it a lot easier for troubleshooting and investigation. And then you can expand that, make that bigger so you get more of a Whisker view inside the free tier. And I guess you get 24 hours worth of flow logs with the free tier versus Whisker, you get 12 hours. So if you need a little bit more longer time to sort of assess, monitor, etc., Calico Cloud free tier might be the way to go. There are also some dashboards. So these logs are also powering dashboards. So with the Calico Cloud free tier, you get access to 3 dashboards. You have cluster health, traffic volume, and flow logs. So you can kind of see some insights here if you're more of a dashboard chart kind of person for monitoring your cluster. You can check out the dashboards. If you've got policies that are denying traffic, again, you'll see bright red lines, chart bars on the bar charts or pie charts or whatever you see. And then again, you can click on these things that will take you straight to the service graph, for example, for your CatFacts application. So very well connected just to help with that troubleshooting and network policy creation. And then the policy board. The one thing I really like about the policy board is compared to like when I was showing the stage network policies, if you're just doing this entirely in the terminal, if you want to know what policies are on inside your cluster, you have to keep running sort of kubectl get network policy commands. And then you don't necessarily know just from looking at that what order they apply in, what rules they have, sort of any more information apart from the name of a policy. With a policy board, you can see every single policy that's applied into that cluster, what tier it belongs in, what the order is. You can check that they have endpoints applied to them. And you can click on any of these policies too, and it gives you sort of a read-only view of what the rules are inside that policy, as well as showing you very clearly how much traffic these policies are allowing or denying. So you'll see these go green if it's allowing traffic or red if it's blocking traffic. Then you can see how it's organized into tiers. So you've got the security tier, you've got some threat feeds that are being blocked here or allowed for compliance, you've got people managing the platform, and then you've got your individual application tiers here. So it just becomes much easier to sort of see and manage your policies with the policy board. And then one thing that we haven't mentioned, because I guess this isn't necessarily new in 3.30, is network sets, but Calico Cloud free tier lets you visualize all of your network sets. So if you're got a lot of like external IP addresses that you need to manage, you can group those together in a network set and then reference those from inside your network policies as well. So if you have network sets inside your cluster, they will also be visible inside Calico Cloud free tier. And then connecting your cluster is very quick. You can have one cluster connected and it literally just takes seconds to sort of copy that manifest file, paste it in your terminal window before you even have a chance to sort of wait or try to fill the silence when you're doing a workshop or a webinar. It's already connected and off you go.
Very cool. Yeah, I think you touched on a couple of things that I just wanted to add a little bit more detail and just highlight some cool examples that we've seen from customers and users. The for you highlighted a couple of policies in that security tier that were monitoring threat feeds. So you can hook Calico policy and network sets into policy. And so that's another interesting use case for staged network policies, because you could if you don't want to go ahead and actively block any communication to maybe a destination that's in one of those threat feeds, but you just want to monitor and alert, you can do that with a staged policy. You can put a staged policy in place that hooks up into that threat feed, and then you can start to just do monitoring and alerting, and build confidence in whatever threat feed you might be using before you then go and move that to actively enforce and block traffic to those potentially malicious destinations. That's a really cool use case for staged policies. And then the other one that I think is really cool that works in conjunction with tiers is putting a staged network policy that is a default deny at the very end of your tier. So the last policy that gets evaluated is a stage policy that is a default deny. So what that does, any sort of denied traffic that's showing up in that policy basically represents communication that's happening in your cluster that's not been yet explicitly authorized by a Calico policy. So if you want to start to progressively move towards a completely like zero trust security posture, you can leverage staged policy and policy tiers to do that quite easily. And that's what a lot of users and a lot of customers are doing. And then finally, network sets. It's probably should have called this out explicitly, but that in combination with Goldmane and Whisker and some of these newer features, it becomes a really powerful tool for observability because you can define whatever network sets you want, and it just provides you to kind of assign some meaning to egress traffic and get more granular visibility. So like if you want to define a network set that is your Redis caches that are living outside of Kubernetes, or like a bank of databases, you can easily define a network set for that, call it whatever you want, and then you can see that metadata appear in flow logs, and that gives you kind of more granular visibility into some of that network traffic. Cool. Thanks for the demo, Jen. That's really, really exciting to see that in action. So just to wrap up, thank you again for joining and listening to this recorded webinar. This is a really exciting release for us, and we're excited to kind of finally get this out the door and share this with the community. I really encourage you to upgrade if you can to 3.30 and start checking it out, and start getting hands-on with some of these new capabilities like Goldmane and Whisker, stage policies, connecting to the free service, some of those other features that I just mentioned, like QoS controls. We've gotten really positive feedback thus far. If you'd like to learn more about 3.30, we do have a blog. So if you go up to tigera.io and go to our blog session, you'll be able to find this link, but it gives you a more in-depth overview of 3.30 and goes into a little bit more in-depth, more detail in terms of what's included. Encourage you to join our Calico users group. So this is on Slack. It's just calicousers.slack.com. Definitely go check out the docs. We invest a lot of time in trying to make those useful, just to solve certain problems that you might have in terms of deploying or operating Calico, but also as a useful way just to learn about some of these new capabilities. And then finally, we're constantly, hosting new events. So check out the events page on tigera.io. And one thing that's not listed here is that I personally am trying to connect with as many users as possible who have upgraded to 3.30, who have started to kick the tires on Goldmane and Whisker, the Calico Cloud free tier. And I'd love to hear your feedback. So I'm regularly posting requests for interviews, and we give you a gift certificate as a token of our appreciation for your time. But we definitely want to hear from you and hear your feedback, because there's a lot of exciting possibilities in terms of how we can evolve this feature set. And we'd love that to be informed by your experience with these features and what you'd like to see next.
Yeah, and
So
I guess I'm biased. Sorry, Phil. I'm
yeah,
gonna talk up the events a little bit more.
Sure.
We've been putting a lot more effort lately into our open source events. So we've got a bunch of workshops, demos all around, just going into more detail with things you saw today and sort of providing hand-on instructions too. So getting you started with actually introducing to network policies and actually creating them, having a go at some of the sort of Calico ingress gateway routing or load balancing and actually setting that up, testing it, and then sort of verifying it in Calico Whisker. So if you are interested in sort of doing or installing 330 for yourself and really maximizing it, I would definitely check out the events page and even the on-demand part of the event, so you can go and catch up on some of the previous ones we've hosted.
Very cool. Yeah, great point. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks, Jen, for your help and just showing off and showcasing some of these capabilities and giving us a little bit of a demo as we went along. We'll end the recorded webinar now. Thank you.
Thanks.